It is 6:30 and I'm calling to order the District 3 Advisory Board for February 3rd, 2021. Welcome to everyone listening on Facebook. Has everyone had a chance to look at tonight's agenda? I know we've had a request to move the zoning case up to be the first thing in the new business items. I guess we probably need a motion to do that.
I'd make a motion that we move the planning item to the top of the list for tonight.
I'll second.
Right. Great. All those in favor say aye.
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 And
Aye.
all those opposed, same sign. Maddie, do you have what you need for the vote on that? Do you have the?
We're good.
Okay, great. All right. And has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from our January 6th, 2021 meeting? Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Okay. If not, I would take a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Second.
great. We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay. So now we'll move on to staff reports. And I noticed we have a couple of officers from Wichita PD. We can start with police department reports.
I'll go ahead and go. I think Batista is still muted. So I'm Officer Jared Metcalf. I'm a community policing officer at Patrol South. I cover 25 beat, which is Pawnee to Harry and Broadway to 135. So I have a few things I wanted to talk about tonight, just a few good things to bring up. The first is we have a recruit class of 50 people that just graduated. Of those 50, we got 15 of those officers came to Patrol South. So they will now be in field training for 12 weeks, which is where they ride with a senior officer and gradually learn more and more of the job before they ride on their own. The second thing is we have a new recruit class that just started, and there's 29 recruits in that class and 19 of those are female, which is the highest percentage of females that we've ever had in a class. Also have two new South community policing officers. Jeremy Diaz is going to 21 beat, which is the Old Town area, and Atlee Vogt is going to cover 28 and 29 beats, which is further south of MacArthur. Those two spots are being filled due to two promotions. Chris Chrisman is being promoted, and Officer Riccio is being promoted, Alex Riccio. So those guys are both being promoted to detectives, so those two new people are filling their spots. Another good thing you've probably seen in the news, our South Broadway ag assaults are down 73% after the Afton Motel was shut down by a court order. That's something that Officer Anthony Villegas, who's another community policing officer down south, has been working really hard on, and it's been a good thing for us. He's also working on a city ordinance which will put some more requirements on hotels to hold them more accountable for the crime that occurs on their property. So that's just something in the works yet. I don't have a whole lot of details on that, but that's something that he's working on. And lastly, I have a few crime stats for District 3, and this is month to month, comparing December to January. Overall crime is down almost 10%. Our robberies are down 25%. Shoplifting is down 23%, and auto thefts are down 31%. The biggest one I could speak on there is probably auto theft. If you've seen the news, we have what's called flock cameras, which are some cameras that will run a license plate on public roads. And if that is stolen, we get an alert on our computer and we can then try to stop that car. We can set what they alert us to, but typically stolen tags and stolen cars. And that's resulted in a huge amount of car stops on stolen cars and stolen tags for us. So that is all I have.
Great, thank you.
Question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Where does the vandalism fall under the crime report? Because it seems like neighbors and on our Facebook, a lot of people are talking about their windows getting broke in and people rifling through their cars. So when that happens, if they report it, where does it fall under? What category?
That is what would be considered a larceny, like an auto accessory or from auto. And so those stats right now are kind of interesting. Larceny of auto accessories is down 14%, but larceny from auto is up 2%. So it kind of comes and goes. I worked on a complaint today about some of that stuff happening near Kellogg and Hydraulic. The biggest thing is people need to report those when they happen. A lot of times people will tell their neighbor or tell their landlord, but they don't report those to us. So we don't know they're going on and we can't do anything to address those. So
Don't
make
they
sure
have
you
to-
make a police report.
Don't they have to have a police
When that
report to
happens.
get insurance though? If they got to
I
file.
don't know.
Okay.
I think a lot of people don't file it. You know, sometimes they rifle through a car and they take change and they may break a window and people think it's not going to meet their deductible or it might raise their insurance. So they don't want to make a report.
All right, thank you.
But if we don't know what's going on, we can't do anything to address it. So we need those police reports.
Thank you.
And you can always reach out to your community policing office also and let us know so we can work on that stuff and try to help people address it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for me?
Yeah.
If nobody has any questions for Officer Metcalf, I would like to add a couple of things. Patrol West is going to be doing what they are calling it is Second Chance Thursdays. And they've done it in the past. And what that does, it's clearing up warrants. So if somebody has a traffic warrant, I think they're addressing notice to appear warrants, probation violation warrants, they can go to the Patrol West Community Policing Office, which is located at 5803 West Central. They're doing that February 11th from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. And what I'll do is I'm gonna copy that and put it on the chat. So if somebody wants to post that on the district advisory board, we're wanting everybody from the whole entire city. We're trying to clear up those warrants that are clogging up our system right now. So the person doesn't have to go to jail. They can just go to the office. They'll get them a different court date, and then we'll clear up that warrant so the person doesn't have to go to jail for that. Another thing that I would like to add is that we're also gaining another community policing officer, which is going to be Chad Ditch. He's already at the Patrol East team. He's just switching from community response to community policing now.
One thing do we do any surveying for the cars parked along the street anymore, or do abandoned cars?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. I think the question that what I'm understanding is if we're still doing cars that are like illegally parked. Is that correct?
Yeah, or abandoned.
Or abandoned, yes. So we have a great system for that. Whenever somebody calls and reports that, they can also do it online. When they do call or make the report, if they can get a tag, if they can see it, vehicle description, how long the vehicle has been parked, a good contact number. So if we do have questions regarding that vehicle, then we can contact that person that's making that report. You don't have to call 911. You can call a police station or contact your community policing officer via email, and then we can go ahead and take care of that for you.
Well, the car's been sitting there since June of last year, and I just wondered if any officers even pay attention to it anymore.
What's the what 100 block and what street is it, sir?
200 block, 3200 block of South Osage.
Okay.
Sorry, Maddie, I gave you the wrong address.
You said 3200 South Osage.
Yeah,
Officer Metcalf, would you be able to take that down? It's
Yeah,
South Bureau.
that should be Secrest.
Okay.
I can email them. Do you know what kind of car it is or what color?
I sent a picture to Maddie
I can
today,
forward Officer Secret.
but I gave her the wrong address. It's on Osage, not Walnut, Maddie.
Okay.
I just wondered if, I see a lot of them down here in my area that seems to set for a long time. And they just don't seem to be tagging them anymore.
Yeah, and sometimes the officer may just not happen to drive through a certain block, or it may look to him like if the car belongs there. Like I said, I don't know what the officer sees, but when you're doing the regular patrols, that's why it's so important for the citizens to contact us and let us know, what belongs there, what doesn't belong there, what's been sitting there for too long, that we can go check it out, see if the vehicle is stolen, and then we can go from there. We can get that vehicle moved so it's not a nuisance for everybody else.
Oh, it's got a June 28th temporary tag on it.
Okay.
And I can blow it up for you and send it. So,
I pass that along to Officer Sechrist.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I had to ask if it was on this meeting
Oh, no.
if we did it anymore.
Yes. No. We still do, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
One real quick thing, Officer Batista, could you possibly forward the information about that warrant Thursday to Maddie, and she can send that out to the neighborhood folks?
Absolutely. I'll get that taken care of right now, and we'll get that
Thank
over
you.
to Maddie. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for our officers tonight? Everyone good? All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you guys. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all your work in our community. So we're grateful.
Thank
Thank
you. Thanks for having us.
So now we'll move on to Wichita Fire Department.
Good evening. My name is Matt Bowen. I'm Battalion Chief number 1 on B shift out of Firehouse 1 at Maine and Murdoch. Latest statistics are from December 2020 for District 3. There were 40 fire alarms, 77 service alarms, 683 medical alarms in District 3 for a total of 800 incidents. Some incidents of note and this is just more recently, in January, fire crews rescued a occupant from a burning home at 2139 South Volusia, brought him out in critical condition, transported to the hospital in serious condition. Our fire investigations department or unit has, in District 3, has investigated 7 significant fires in the past 31 days. I spoke with an investigator earlier today, and in the southern part of District 3, he had followed up on an April fire that they're getting ready to make an arrest, and they received a confession from the arsonist. Any questions on those statistics or in particular calls in your district or concerns regarding fire department?
I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
For a nuisance fire, I know that sometimes there's a burn ban in place, and then sometimes there's not. But when people are burning their garbage or leaves off within the city property, what number do we call for a nuisance fire?
You can try the administrative number, but if there's a nuisance fire, even if there's not a burn ban on, if the smoke or odor is causing issue with any of the neighbors or anything, then by law, they have to extinguish that fire. So 911, you need to just call it in like you would anything else. Tell them, be specific, this is whether it's contained, not contained, whether or not you wish to be contacted. Give them details. We'll respect your wishes as far as if you want contact or not. But if we're called out, short of it being a cooking fire, like they're smoking or grilling or something, we will put the fire out or have them put it out with on-site resources. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just know that sometimes people do like a yard cleanup and they're not really quite sure that the smoke that's coming off of burning leaves and refuse in their yard causes havoc for other people with, like, especially, health conditions or asthma. So thank you.
You bet. To tag on to his information about the burn ban, or his mention of the burn bans, this time of year, the fall and early spring, winter time is potentially a really dangerous time for doing any exterior burning. We have what we call a grassland fire index that we monitor every single day. Wintertime is typically drier than our summer and late spring months. All our fuels are dry, and it doesn't take much to dry them out further. So often there'll be red flag warning days where we'll have a increased response, even to grass fires. Instead of a single unit response, we may, depend on the level of danger, we might have a 2 or 3 unit response on those. So that's something to be cognizant of this time of year. If it's been dry, the humidity levels often are down, the winds are up. Be careful if you're even just grilling or doing anything. You asked for a contact number. Any questions, anytime you want to reach out. Of course, during this COVID period, we're all taking precautions and trying to social distance, but you still have your neighborhood fire stations. You're welcome to stop by. We may socially distance, but we're still your fire department. A number, and if I can, Maddie, can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me find your name here.
Did this come up?
Okay, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Let me see if it'll share screen. So what I've loaded up here before, and this is just some general information, safety information about fires today and different things and what you can do for your home safety. It's called Close Before You Doze. This is a national fire prevention community risk reduction program. Our fire department's adopted it several years ago, and essentially, anytime we can isolate from the toxic environments, even within our homes, sleeping with your bedroom doors closed, that really factors in survivability. The things we have in our homes now are much more toxic than they were a few years ago, with the plastics and different things we have now versus 25 years ago. So some good information here, just some facts to help you and your family. Also at the bottom, it has all our contact information right here with the number, and that's our community risk reduction division, and they can answer any questions regarding smoke detectors, CO alarms, you name it. We're rapidly approaching when we spring forward with our clocks. At a minimum, we need to check our smoke detector batteries and check our smoke detectors biannually in the fall and spring, but this is something to possibly, if you have children, to get them involved and make it a monthly check just to be safe. Practice your fire drills. I'm gonna stop that. Any questions regarding some of the things I talked about?
What is the life expectancy of the carbon dioxide tester in the home?
Most, and I'm probably not exactly an expert, sir, but service life on most smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, CO detectors we have out there on the market are about 10 years. When you purchase one, it typically gives you that information, but we have a program that if say your smoke detectors, if they're battery operated and not hardwired, if your smoke detectors are out of that service life, you can call that Wichita Fire Department number, and we have a smoke detector program to help and assist people to ensure they're protected in their home.
Well, I don't need the assistance, but I've got one that's been in the hallway for many years. I just wondered if it should be replaced or.
I'm not 100% sure, but 10-year service life is typical of what you buy out of the big box stores. They recommend replacement after 10 years.
Do we have any on the market today? Is, let's say, less than usable? You know of?
I don't have any idea or am aware of any that are being marketed that aren't recommended. Generally, just to be carried in our big box and retail stores, UL Laboratories are one of the testing. And if anytime you buy a safety item, if it doesn't have the UL on it, I wouldn't purchase it because
Well, it just seemed funny the price range went from like $10, $9.99 to $59.99. I just couldn't figure out what the advantage and disadvantage is.
Yeah, UL Laboratories, I would look for that symbol on.
The UL label was on all of them.
Pardon?
The UL label was on all of them.
Then I would say it's, I know they say you get what you pay for, but if it's UL listed, I would say it's met the minimum standards of what they require. So
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions? Doesn't look like it.
all right.
Great. Thank you
Folks,
for being
have a
with
great
us.
evening. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
One thing I might comment that most of mine are dated on the front, and a lot of them you can't hardly find the date on it. And you might inform people that if they date them, then they can, when they walk by, they can see they're out of date.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Take a little Sharpie or something and
Yeah.
make it a lot more visible than what might be on the manufacturer's date. You bet. You folks have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now we will have an update from the Wichita Public Library on our new District 3 branch.
Sorry. Actually, sorry, my dogs just started going nuts. The staff person is gonna do this is sick, so I can give an update. He emailed me some points that I'll share at the end of our meeting. In the interest of time, we need to get through the zoning case so we can get to our clap meeting, okay, or our clap presentation.
All right, let's move on to the zoning case for our new business.
Good evening. My name is Philip Zevenbergen with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. Our zoning item is trying to get my camera to work here. It's a CUP amendment, so the community unit plan amendment located at Pawnee and Oliver. It was heard by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission 2 weeks ago. The applicant is Evergy. What they're looking at doing is building a new substation. Oh, there we go. If you recall, the site is on the southwest corner of Pawnee and Oliver. And if you recall, there is a current substation at that location. And what they're doing is they're amending the CUP to permit a substation on other parcels of the CUP. A CUP is a community unit plan, which is a governing document for large commercial developments. And a lot of times the uses are managed parcel to parcel. And so the parcel that the current substation is on permits a substation. Parcels closer to Pawnee did not. And so they're amending the CUP to permit that use on those parcels so that they can build a new substation that will replace the existing substation that's there. There's some other details on there of realigning some of the parcel boundaries to match up with a new plat they're going to do, just kind of cleaning up some of the lot lines and lot boundaries and stuff like that. But really the nuts and bolts of it is just permitting a new substation where there's currently a substation existing to expand capacity and service capability for Evergy. The other thing that they were doing with the CUP is amending the landscaping requirements or the screening requirements. They're actually going above and beyond what the zoning code permits for screening. Our code states a 6 to 8 foot fence, and they're actually going to be doing a 9-foot fence surrounding the substation property, just to help screening, knowing it is a substation and they want to, try to reduce the visual impact of it. It's a fairly commercial heavy area. So there's really no concerns regarding the impact of this type of development at a major intersection with, a tremendous amount of commercial around it. Our comprehensive plan identifies the area for new employment, which obviously you would think would be for business, and it makes sense. It's a large commercial node at the intersection of two arterial roads. But obviously it's in the best interest, not only for commercial uses, but residential uses, to expand the capacity and capability of our electric network for electricity. So we find this in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And really there's not much else to it. Obviously the site could be developed commercially, but since the substation was already there, they already have infrastructure to move the power away from that site. So it makes sense to allow a new substation to be built. As I mentioned before, it was heard at Planning Commission 2 weeks ago. It was approved unanimously with a 11-0 vote. There was no public comment on this. I haven't heard any comments, either good or bad, from anybody. It's been a pretty easy, straightforward process. If it is not protested, the protest period ends tomorrow. If it is not protested, it doesn't even have to go to City Council for final approval. Our zoning code gives a latitude to the Planning Commission for CUP amendments, as well as conditional uses that, if they're not protested, that the Planning Commission's decision is final. We don't anticipate any protests coming through. The reason we're here presenting to you tonight is since the meeting is before the protest period ends, more from a legal side of things, we need to have this presentation just in case somebody does protest. That way we have advised City Council should it have to go to City Council, though we do not foresee that actually happening. With that, I can stand for any questions.
I do. We approve this.
I have a question, Philip.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You mentioned the CUP amendment, and there was one other detail there. What was that other one that can go and be voted straight through without any
Yeah,
protest.
so a conditional use. This site does not have a conditional use on it. I was just saying that for example's sake. An example, we have a conditional use could be some things, for example, in limited commercial zoning, somebody would have to seek a conditional use for outdoor vehicle sales. It's a use that we find could be an acceptable use within a zoning category, but we want a site specific analysis on it. And so we require people to do conditional uses so we can take a look at it and have a public hearing on it. And so that's where if there's no opposition to it, the zoning code permits the planning commission to have the final say. If somebody does actually protest and file official opposition to it, it then requires the city council for final action.
I have a question. Where on Pawnee and Oliver, is it on the northwest side, on the northeast side, on the southwest side, or the southeast side?
It's the southwest corner. So the part of that land that is going to be, if you're familiar with the intersection, the southwest side, immediately right up against Pawnee, like right at the intersection, there's no buildings at all.
Yeah, it's big.
Substation is going to go. South of where the new substation will be is the pawn shop.
Okay.
Larger, the two that faces Oliver.
Okay.
The strip of land along Pawnee, it's mostly along Pawnee that has no buildings on it.
Okay.
The new substation.
Okay, thank you.
Do they own that land, lease that land? How's that?
My understanding is that they will be owning that land.
Okay.
I don't recall offhand. That's my assumption that they would want to own it and not lease it, because if you build a substation and your landlord decides, nope, I don't want you to be my renter anymore, that's not really good for Evergy to lose that type of utility.
Sir, George Theo Harris, president of Grandview Metal Arc, just across the street from that location. Is there any chance that they would, Evergy would give some consideration, since it's just southwest of there? Plainview has some problems with some cul-de-sacs that are very dark. Is there any way that they might give some consideration to getting some more lighting down there for those people that are in need of it?
I unfortunately cannot speak for Evergy. I think that's a really good idea. What I can do, I'll stay on the meeting when the item is done. I can find a contact for Evergy in my email, and I'll put it in the chat box. I could also email it to Maddie if you'd like, so you can contact Evergy and pass that information along.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
I move that we accept the recommendation.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Catherine, I will be abstaining.
Great, thank you. All those opposed, same sign. Okay.
To confirm, I have 7-4 and 1 abstention.
I think that's correct.
Okay, so it passed 701. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So now we will move on to the Clap Park Master Plan update.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Larry Hoopmer. I'm the principal planner with the City of Wichita, landscape architect as well. Tonight we're going to be updating you on a master plan process that began last spring, actually, 2020. So we've been at this for several months now. And with us tonight, we have Confluence, who's going to take you through the plan, but we're really excited to kind of show you some of where we're at. The process has been a good one, we think, in light of the fact that we've done this through a pandemic. We've had we believe, a successful several steps along the way. Greteman Group did a very good job of doing a community survey. Excellent response from the community. I think over 900 responses. So anyway, I'm managing this with Troy Hauptman, who couldn't be here this evening, our park director. Anyway, I'm just we're kind of at the point now where we're in the final stages and landing on this master plan. And with that, I'm going to invite PJ Novick and Hank Moyers. PJ is the principal with our Confluence Group, a landscape architecture firm in the Kansas City area, and Hank Moyers, his associate. And with that, I'm going to allow them to take you through the master plan and take you through each area and go through some of the specifics, give you a broader idea of what where we've landed on this master plan. So with that, I'll let you take the screen here, PJ.
Well, great. What we're going to do tonight is we'll walk through the overall plan. I'll walk you through some aerials that we have, but the plan is kind of broken down in four areas. But as you can see here, this is the final master plan on the right. To orient you, Oliver is on the right-hand side here on top, Bluff on the left-hand side, and then Meadow Lanes. You can see we've got the main entry coming in off of Harry and also off Oliver. We have then the entry drive coming in. We have a very exciting core area of the park that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Then on the east side, we have more kind of an athletics-based area. And then we have a large playground area and water play area in the heart of the park. And then the rest of the park is open space, walking trails, disc golf. And then there's kind of a neighborhood park aspect on the west here that has, we'll talk about a dog park and some parking and trail access there. So Hank, we go on to the next one. So this is an aerial. This is generally looking southwest with the plan. As you can see, the heart of the park there with a large prairie planting to the right along the entry. So you can see then the large amount of open space we have looking to the south, and then the neighborhood park area, and then the athletics area off to our left along Oliver. And this is just another view. This is like looking southeast at this point. As you can see, this is a different view of kind of the heart of the park, which we'll get into. And then we have the kind of children's play area with the large playground area kind of in the center to right. And then we've got some ponds that are being proposed to help with some flooding and also have some aesthetic value to the park. And then off in the distance is the athletic area. So in general, I'll talk about kind of this open area of the park. So as you can see down through here, that we've got area 1. So we've got access off of Bluff Street. We've got at that point, we've got a neighborhood park playground. So figure like what you typically see within the Wichita park system, probably two facilities for younger kids and a little older kids with that. We also have a park pavilion there that would have probably seats about, capacity of probably about 16, 20 maybe. And it would have a restroom facility in there, and that is an open air shelter. So it kind of supports the playground. And also, then we also have item 3 shows a smaller neighborhood dog park. So that kind of all works together. So the folks who live within walking distance from the park have an opportunity to come down, meet the neighbors, get the dogs off leash to have a little exercise at the end of the day. And then throughout the park, you'll see there's a lot of large, just beautiful vegetation in area 4 here, which the idea of a hammock grove, where you could come and attach your hammock to the trees and lay down underneath the shade, read a book, listen to music, or just enjoy some peace and quiet. And then throughout this area, we also have the 18-hole disc golf course that will come in and out of the trees, taking advantage of some of the beautiful views and some of the vistas that the park has. So Hank's going to take you through some more detailed areas as we go through.
So the first area that we really want to touch on, and I'll actually start over here along Oliver Street. This is the promenade area, and we see this really as the most highly intense area. But before we get into that, I want to touch on, we've got this inlet that enters the park underneath Oliver Street here. And what we've proposed there is a 4-bay pollutant removal system that has a catch on the end of it that is a net that will catch a lot of the trash and debris that comes into the park from this facility, or from the culvert underneath the roadway here. And really, this provides us an opportunity to really help clean up that creekway. There will also need to be some mitigation that goes on along some of those banks based on a lot of the erosion that we're seeing on site. So as we get into more of the nuts and bolts of the promenade area, we've got several items that are showing up in this space. Item number one here is a 2-level bistro with an outdoor patio on the roof that looks down into this central gathering space. There is a parking area of 112 parking spaces dedicated directly to that off to the west that you can access off of the Harry entry drive. Within that central core area too, we also have a band shell with a smaller green on the south side and a larger, more terraced green on the north side. This is not meant to be a large venue. It's meant more for smaller neighborhood level gatherings and events and festivals. Within this space as well, we've got a shade structure and pavilion that provides a gathering space with a small fountain piece included as part of that. And then off to the east, we've got a farmer's market. This is really, think of an all seasons pavilion with heaters and air conditioning as part of that, or roll up doors associated with that. And then we've got 101 parking spaces on that. And what this allows us to do is to phase this over time so that as these different pieces come on, we can pull in different amounts of parking. So the bistro will be a outside vendor more than likely to come in, and that parking area will not likely come on until that element gets brought in. Also within the promenade area, you can see here on number 7, the Prairie Overlook. And we've got some graphics of this that'll show this is a large mound that has a walkway that spirals up to the top that really provides some great views throughout the entire park. And then on the north side of this is the Aviation Hill. So think of a sloped, very sculptural earth form element that could be used for people to go out and watch the planes fly over, allow for people to go out and stargaze, or even to really, if you happen to get snow, allow for some sledding to occur as well. This is just a view of that space. So this is looking from the north, looking down towards the southwest, so you can see the terraced event space. And then the central gathering space, the bistro over here, the farmer's market, and then the elements down further to the south. Another view, even closer, kind of looking at the scale of what we're looking at here. And then this is a view from the parking lot, looking to the west of the bistro and into that central gathering area. And then this would be a view from the west looking towards the east of the farmer's market. You can see the roll-up doors that would allow vendors to pull up and allow for those roll-up doors to have a year-round use as part of this. Another view from the south looking towards Harry. You can see this central gathering plaza, the array of trees that works through there, the small reflecting pool, and some shade elements incorporated as part of that. Also along the drive here, you can see some parking spaces. This would provide access for food truck vendors as well. Next area we want to touch on would be the active use area. This is more the playground and the cornhole area. So you can see off the entry drive here, this is coming to the south. We have a smaller 84 parking stall parking area. We have a pavilion here that would be specifically dedicated to a bags area that would have about a 24-person capacity with restrooms. And then you can also see this would be the space for the cornhole courts. As part of this, we've got a larger pavilion. This would be more of a larger shelter. And we have talked potentially about this also having some roll-up doors to allow for extended usage throughout the season. And you can see we've got a signature playground facility here, more of a nature-based play element likely. And then adjacent to that, we've got a natural spray ground. Think of rocks with sprays in them, jets, runnels, just a larger element that is not a lot of catalog pieces like you would see in a lot of spray ground areas. This is a view from the south looking towards the northeast. You can see here is the large overlook hill, prairie overlook. And then this would be the cornhole pavilion. This would be the playground pavilion. You can see kind of the playground in the background and then the splash pad. And then PJ mentioned earlier, there's an athletics area. This area has a parking lot that comes in just off of, with an entry drive off of the access at Oliver. And it allows for 70 spaces as part of this space. As part of that, we've also got a smaller park pavilion with restrooms. We've got 4 half-court basketball courts. We've got 6 pickleball courts. And then just to the outside of that, we also have an area for a pump track that would be right off of the trail access through here. You can see a general view of what that might look like. This is from the south looking to the north towards the Park Loop Drive. And then again, just the pavilion associated with that. And so with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
The that hill with the observation on top and the winding track.
Yes.
Is there any mitigation for skateboards on that, or is that going to be an issue?
You know, I think we'll have to take a look at the radius on that. Hopefully we can do that tight enough that it wouldn't be attractive to skateboarders, because you can't turn that tight of a radius. It kind of serves 2 purposes. We're going to be digging out to make some of these ponds to help with the stormwater issues within the park. And so being able to use some of that soil to build that mound and also build the aviation hill. But, you know, it's not terribly high, just the idea that you could get with the park being generally pretty, you know, obviously pretty flat, the idea of just getting you to be able to, you know, get up some, you know, 10, 15, 20 feet perhaps, and kind of view down into the park, we think would be something interesting. And also walking within a well-maintained prairie planting is really a unique experience.
And what about the 4-bay pollutant control? You said there was a net that operated to catch things. How
Yeah,
does
what-
it get cleaned
What
out?
that is it's a net system that it gets what we call first flush. So it's that first rain event when it's just starting, which usually brings down most of the trash that's accumulated upstream of us. So that is a maintenance thing. So over you really can't say how long, but it's probably replacing it every couple of months perhaps. But it just catches that material, so it doesn't make itself, you know, farther into the park. So once it catches all that, then the water is really going over that net system and into the park. So it's just a pretty economical way to try to help with some of the trash issues.
And how did you say that was cleaned out?
They actually you have to come in and you come in and remove the net. So they'll have to bring trucks in and just pick it up and put it in the back of the dump truck, and then it's just hauled off to be disposed of, and a new net is literally put on.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry.
Sure.
My first question is obviously a great idea. One, what is the revenue, the stream that we think the city is going to be able to generate from some of the events and the vendors that are going to be there? And then 2, I'm assuming this is going to come out of the general fund.
Yeah.
Larry, you want to hit the general fund issue or the funding issue?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the way this normally works, or we would like it to work is, so we're putting together this master plan. We're starting now to look at the numbers, develop cost estimates. We're refining all of these pieces currently, and we'll probably have like a phase one proposal. We're going to go to city council probably here in the next couple of months. And the idea is to present this to city council, begin to share some numbers associated to some of these improvements, primarily the first phase improvements. And then what the city does is it goes through the capital improvement program process. And it's sort of a competitive process that's, you know, amongst all the departments. And we look at projects that are important to the city. And then we make the case for, okay, this project's going to be X amount of dollars. We want to do that in, you know, a 3-year period maybe. And we associate those numbers to those 3 years. And then it goes through a review process through a committee to see, you know, how it can be funded. So that's kind of in a nutshell how that works in terms of what we call general obligation funds, which is from the general fund.
But what about revenue streams? Like, is the city going to be able to bring in some income from these vendors? I think that's maybe what David was asking.
Yeah, that's a good question. So as far as revenue stream goes, what we're looking at, we think we have an opportunity for a couple ideas. Primarily one, the main one would be the bistro area. What the city is looking to do on that is to engage into an RFP process, whereas we would solicit the services of a company that could provide, you know, bistro restaurant type services, and we would go through those proposals to see what was the best fit for the park. And then once it was determined which vendor was the best fit, then negotiations would take place in terms of a percentage of revenue from that business that could go back to the city. We don't really have, you know, the closest thing we have to this now, you know, of course we got Watson Park, which is totally city ran. But this would be an opportunity for the private sector to engage into doing something special and unique. And then there would be some sort of percentage of sale revenue that would come from that business opportunity.
And Larry, if I can jump into, there's other opportunities, for instance, the vendors at the farmer's market.
The farmer's market, thank you, yeah.
Bring that.
Failed to mention that that's a huge part of it. And yeah, PJ, you can kind of expand on that, but there's going to be some opportunities. We, you know, going through the planning process and the surveys, we learned that this is a food desert area, lack of grocery stores and things of that nature. And we really feel like this is a prime spot to do this. And so there's some opportunities, I think, for revenue streaming there. PJ, I know you guys have some real good experience at Kansas City with the farmers markets up there.
Yeah, we do. And I'll paint an example. Like, think of let's talk about what would happen in the park on maybe a Friday night or Saturday. That there's, you know, the bistro is running. Perhaps there's a small, you know, small band that's playing underneath the pavilion, so people are gathered around just listening to the music, watching people participate in the park. On Saturday morning, the farmers market is open. With that, then where Hank showed the parking along the entry into the pavilion area, those are food trucks. So you have the opportunity to maybe you get something to eat at the food truck for lunch. You go through the farmers market. There's a small band playing. So really enlivening that space. So there's multiple activities going on. And also another revenue generation is we intentionally have a larger pavilion down by the playground and water play. And that we plan that as a year-round pavilion. So the idea that, you know, a family, if they have a birthday party for one of their kids, they can rent that out for, say, a lot of the parks we've done, maybe it's like a 2-hour time limit that you get. So you have enough time, the kids can play in the playground, they can come inside the pavilion to, you know, birthday cake and ice cream or lunch or whatever, and then they can come in. So there's multiple times where you could have that revenue generation in that building. Again, it's not, it wouldn't be a charge for the playground or water play, but if you wanted to rent that pavilion to have a little bigger event, you know, that would certainly be an option there. So there's a multitude of opportunities, and we're working on a business plan to help the Parks Department understand what those opportunities are.
One other potential that we've looked at as well is with the athletics areas, and you've got the courts there. There is a potential if someone wanted to have a tournament or some sort of activity there. There's some revenue generation there from rentals as well for that space and pavilion as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really, this adventure playground, we don't really have one at this scale currently in the city. And we have probably over 85 playgrounds in the city. I've been involved with a good number of those over the years, and they're highly popular. But what we're talking about doing here is really an over-the-top signature, has been mentioned in the presentation, adventure playground, and we really feel like it's going to be a huge magnet for the park. And so, to PJ's point, you know, that shelter would probably be a pretty popular one to do for birthday parties and rentals and such. But we really think that's something that's going to really draw some people into the park. That particular feature on its own.
I think if you all think back to almost a year ago when we first started talking about the programming of the park, we talked about a park is a different thing in the morning than it is at noon, than it is in the afternoon, than it is at night, and trying to identify facilities and opportunities. So there's, you know, something that's always attractive, brings you back to the park. So it's just not a facility you just come to the playground and go home, that there's really an opportunity to capture the interest of folks, so you can bring the family and you can do 2 or 3 things on a Saturday instead of just the playground. So it's an opportunity to really enliven the park, bring more people in the park, which really just helps the overall success of the master plan and the ultimate completed project.
So I have a couple of questions, comments. I'm curious. So when we went through the process on the committee to discuss what would happen with Clapp Park, and the big concern with Clapp was that every year it was losing money as a golf course. And while this is a fantastic plan, and I'm in support of a fantastic plan, I'm curious if we look at the maintenance cost of a park like that compared to the revenue that's now kind of been adjusted down from what we had originally discussed on the first committee that discussed this project. Are we going to come out any better than what we were when this was a golf course? Because I know the city has struggled over the years. You know, I spent 3 years helping to develop a comprehensive plan, a 20-year plan for the city and the county. And I know that has traditionally been an issue, as that we have built things at the city, which again, I'm all about because I think we need to move forward,
Right.
but we don't have the money to maintain them. And so then we build really nice things, but then they go downhill because there's no funds to maintain them. And we're currently trying to catch up on the maintenance on our roads because of the deferred maintenance that occurred for so many years. And we're still way behind, in addition to, you know, the deferred maintenance on other infrastructure throughout the city. So
No,
I
those
don't
are
know,
real.
that question, comment.
Yeah, I might try to respond to some of that. Those are excellent points. Well, number one, you know, our whole golf system went into, went through a whole process of determining, okay, we've got 5 golf courses and we can't sustain them all. And so, of course, here we are. We're at this point now. We did make the big decision to close the golf course. The golf system is set up as an enterprise system, so they're not. They were hypothetically speaking, they were self-sufficient. And so, with the downturn in the golf industry, that was reflected heavily in, unfortunately, their demise for this location. But to your point, those are excellent points. I would say a couple things. Number one, one of the things in the plan that we have, which I'm a huge proponent of, and I think is a unique feature in the master plan, is the entry drive, and you've seen the overlook hill and the native prairie landscape. And as someone who lives in the country and has a high appreciation for native landscaping, I think that's something that could be very unique to this area. Once you get those kind of landscapes established, they're very good on in terms of sustainability. You don't have to water them. You don't have to irrigate them. You don't have to fertilize them. You only cut them a couple different times a year. So there would be some cost savings, and that's a pretty good chunk of the plan and the entryway that's part of this master plan. There is some maintenance needs in this area, and there's some stormwater needs. This plan is addressing some of those things. We've had some very in-depth discussions about, as has been mentioned earlier, on how to reduce the trash that comes into the park. There may be an opportunity, we're exploring it right now, to see if perhaps we could partner with stormwater maybe on the development of these ponds. There's that maintenance aspect of it. There's some things there that need to be done. But yeah, those are good questions. I think we're basically trying to reimagine a premium, beautiful piece of real estate that's been there in the neighborhood for many, many years. Gorgeous cypress trees, just a beautiful canopies of existing trees in the park, some nice infrastructure in terms of pathways and stuff that many of which we hope to retain. But it's one of those things. We do hope to get some revenue after we develop the park. This part of the District 3 this is something that's pretty significant in terms of green space and park development for this area. So I'm not going to try to candy coat it. It's certainly a challenge and well noted, but you kind of have to, in a way, have to separate the golf thing from the park side of things a little bit, because that was kind of a business decision that was made to close this golf course and turn it into a future park. And so I guess it remains to be seen, but we're hopeful that with some of these major elements in the plan that we can create enough synergy and popularity. I know Confluence has done a couple of nice projects in the Kansas City area and it just taken off. And I think during the pandemic, we've learned that there's a higher appreciation for outdoor spaces and park spaces in particular. We've seen a huge uptick in usage in our parks. So it's been kind of a little bit of a silver lining to this very difficult time. PJ, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, but go ahead.
I got some questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I live right across the street from the park, so I'm going to probably sound prejudiced, okay?
Okay.
In the pictures and the overview, it looks like we lose a lot of trees. Now, if the trees are established and not bad, are they going to try and work around it, or are you going to tear out trees and then plant new trees? Because
Actually, Michael, we've worked around, we have a location of all the trees. And so anywhere from the ponds down to the orient where we've got the, like the playground going in, we have been very selective on trying to find those areas that are void of trees where we don't do that. Cause that is really, that's the charm of the piece of land with these beautiful, majestic trees. And we made every attempt to work around all of those so we don't lose that. That's the last thing we want to do is have to tear down a beautiful mature tree.
Okay, thank you. And then also the sidewalks, the widths. Right now, people are using the bikes when the weather's nice, or the trail, the sidewalks for bike paths. Now, we know if people like my wife and I decide to walk on the path and a bike comes along, and it's not going to really be enough room. Is there any plans in the future for widening all the walking paths so you won't experience somebody coming at you on a bicycle when you're trying to walk on the path? Have you thought about?
So I can address that. We did look at the existing cart path locations out there. And we have noted that along those cart paths, the plan would be to widen those from what they are existing today. But we're trying to utilize as much of the existing alignment as we possibly can throughout the park to really be efficient in the use of dollars.
Okay, I'm assuming that the bridges are going to be upgraded.
Yes.
Okay, then also on page, or no, the amphitheater and pavilion page.
Yes.
I've got, okay, it says looking southwest. That's directly into the sun, and most people, most performances are usually done in the evening. Is there any reason why that couldn't be turned around so you're looking with the sun to your back, or some kind of, because the way this sets up, if you have somebody performing and you're the sun's going down, I don't see it would be very entertaining.
So if you look at this, we've got dual orientation here, so that depending on the time of day, it can be used for different events and different scales of events. So, if it's an evening presentation, people can come out here and sit on the lawn. If it's a morning event, people can come out and look out into that space as well, whether that's used for movie nights or small bands, or even just present or some sort of another performance or act.
Yeah.
Multi-use.
I don't know if most people have a picture of the pavilion amphitheater though, but there's no shade, there's no protection from the sun whatsoever. I'm not trying to say you have to redo the whole thing, but there you go, right there. It says looking southwest, and that's directly into the sunlight.
Well, there's two schools of thought on that. A lot of times you want to give the shade or not looking into the sun to the performers, but it's kind of a two-edged sword with that. But
okay, that's a good point. But I just thought it would be if there's 4 performers and there's 400 people, I think I would cater to the ones that may have paid to see this band. Anyway, I'm not trying to be negative, because I think overall, I've looked at this thing for several days. It's a beautiful, beautiful plan. Now, the other thing the last 2 things I have is a city park. Do we build a city park to make money? I mean, I hope you do make money off the things that you're talking about, but it's a green space. It's not, that doesn't mean it's supposed to generate funds to maintain itself, or we would have kept the golf course.
That's a great point. And what we've been striving to do is identify areas where we can have some income generation that is fed back into the park. So it's not a total money out in supporting the park. So, typically, if we're able to get, in a perfect world, if you were able to get somewhere between 30-40% return on this to help maintain, that would be fantastic. And your income generators, as we said, is the bistro. It's the opportunity to program the farmers markets. That farmers market will have overhead doors, so it can be a farmers market in the morning. It could hold a wedding reception for 150 Saturday night with just beautiful views out into the park. And then imagine that if it's a nice autumn or a spring evening, you open half the doors up and you've got the interior, you got the exterior space out there. And it becomes just a wonderful area to be able to program and rent.
Yeah, I think you've done a wonderful job. I just, was bringing up some points that kind of just I stood out to me. I do have one suggestion on the dog park. I think it ought to be called the George Theo Harris Memorial Dog Park. And then maybe you can raise some money with George donating for the signage.
He's not dead yet.
I
He
know
has
that
to be dead.
he loves dogs.
We don't want him dead.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. You just woke up the beast. This is George Theo Harris, the Grandview.
I didn't mean. I was
Grandview,
just joking about it because there is an ordinance that you guys know that already. But
Grandview. I'm the Grandview Meadowlark president where Clap Park sits.
right.
That dog park over there, which forget the dog park. I go to every animal advisory board meeting. That's not a problem. There's 32 slots there. You guys are not paying attention. You're not listening. I've asked for more, and you've asked me to go talk with the superintendent of schools. She's like the Wizard of Oz. She's behind some curtain. I've called numerous times. I can't get through to her, but we need more parking there. And if James was still here, he'd be fighting for us on this. We don't have a city councilor right now. So pump the brakes a little bit, pump the brakes just a little bit, because people want to get something done there. But let us get a city councilor in place that can fight for us and help us make sure that we get the best plan for the citizens of the neighborhoods and Wichita.
Yeah, George, we're cognizant of the fact that there's a need for, I know with the Griffith School there and the some of the traffic associated to, bringing your children to school and then picking them up in the evening or late afternoon. We're really still hopeful that we can come up with an understanding with the school, maybe to have a shared parking there that they could utilize. We have, the Westlink Park, I guess we have a park on the west side called Westlink, and we have a similar situation there. We have a parking lot across the street, and the school gets more use out of that parking lot than the park does. But what we want to be careful of is, it is parkland. It's owned by the city. USD 259 is another big entity. We've partnered on other projects. I think the city park department's been very benevolent in the past, in my opinion, with USD 259 on other past projects. I can point out like West Douglas Park, North Linwood Park. So we're hopeful. We feel like we've had a good relationship in the past, but it is an opportunity. We own the land. Maybe they can help us develop that parking area. It's always debatable on how big that parking should be. We want to be careful of not over paving the green space. So we have to find that sweet spot, and that's kind of where we feel like we are at this point on that size. But I know there's a lot of concern for that area, parking.
There is an issue with parking, and it would be nice to see if it could at least be looked at how to do something with the traffic flow in that area. And that was under consideration for a long time, but I wanted to address the creation of currency by the park. Briefly, social infrastructure, which a park is a part of it, in and of itself helps to fight inequality, the decline of civic life, polarization between peoples. We grow community and rapport with our neighbors by bumping into them in public. That's where the friendliest sorts of salutations are given and received. And it's in those howdies where rapport is generated and community is rebuilt. It's the rebuilding of that rapport, that community through moments of rapport that keeps our civic life healthy, our civil life healthy, right? So I think while you can't really put something in that's all nice and shiny and attracts people and then is overrun with problems that lead to its decline and chases people away, it's important to recognize the impact that these parks have, and that really it's one of the few places that we have to do that. We certainly are not doing that online. Even the best of chat rooms and stuff are prone to brigading, trolls, and things that take the wind out of people's sails that they had when they first started to engage virtually with neighbors. So I think it's important to look at that. The other thing I wanted to ask, and if I could be permitted to ask a stupid question, I know that Clap Park is in an opportunity zone, and opportunity zones allow for capital gains tax to be put off. Does it have any other attributes like that would affect generating income for the city? And I don't know.
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think I've got probably a good answer for you.
Rich, could you repeat that question?
Does
head out for a second on my screen.
That's okay. Well, the question was, because Clap Park is in an opportunity zone, does that give people doing business there a way of withholding or foregoing on paying taxes to the city beyond the capital gains exclusion that they have for, I think it's 10 years? I don't know that, I mean, you're in parks and Confluence, and I don't know that anybody here has that expertise, but it's something I just wanted to bring up to.
I don't know that it in terms of tax abatement or that sort of thing for businesses, I wouldn't be qualified to respond to that. But when you said opportunity zone, I was thinking there has been some discussion, I think, in the planning department about areas in the city that are like people for places, cities, and there's grants and there's opportunities sometimes if you can kind of state your case or drive your case for special grant funding because of an area that you're in, and demonstrate that you can do special things. We're reimagining a park or a golf course and bring in new life. And to your point earlier, which was excellent, I think a lot of, we have parks and green spaces. It's very kind of a philosophical thing. They add so much value to a community, to the edges of the places that you redevelop, if you do them right and you listen. And so there is that value you don't get maybe in terms of revenue. I mean, we did talk about some opportunities for revenue production in this park, but the other value goes way beyond with all those things you've just said, bringing new life to a vacant piece of property that's got a lot of beautiful attributes to it. We just finished. It's amazing. We remaster plan actually in-house a park away on the west side, Pawnee Prairie Park. Maybe some of you've been to it. And we went through this really long process of trying to determine. Historically, that was an equestrian park for the most part. And by making a few big moves of adding some bike paths very strategically, it was controversial. And we've added a playground there. We've just made it's amazing. I mean, I've been with the city for over 20 years, and the amount of use that park gets now, you just cannot believe. I hear people all the time tell me it's like a whole different piece of land, with the usage just gone through the roof because of how we've approached designing and planning for that piece of property. So I'm hoping that sort of thing can happen here. Because before it was just not to say it was just a golf course. I have nothing against golfing. I have an appreciation for the sport. I think it's an awesome sport. But now you've got a piece of land, a very significant piece of park property that is going to be open basically to the entire public at large. And so your customer base, if you want to look at it that way, is been increased substantially in some ways.
Yeah, and when people are loving the parkland, then there's an opportunity too for people to take pride in it, to pick trash up and to take care of some of that stuff. But right. I'm wondering how much thought has gone into organizing the park around the maintenance part to maybe take care of its own, like some of that rainwater, the water that goes through that. If there's a way to capitalize on that and use that for watering the grass and for watering the trees. If there's, I'm an advocate for putting in a community garden that the kids could use at that school, and it could carry over and provide a way for young people to meet with older people with skills that could learn so much. And this being in part an answer to Charlie Davidson's recent news report or crime report, talking about pleading with the public to come up with some way of engaging our youth to turn them away from this downward spiral into gang activity and crimes. I think there's been 6 murders so far, and one of them was, I believe, a 16-year-old boy that was involved in that. So doing double duty there, but rain gathering things for a community garden, or for we have the prairie grasses that are ecological themselves for stream bank preservation, and who knows what all else, the attraction of pollinators, but the maintenance of stuff like buildings and things like that. Maybe there is a room for a friends of type organization that would work to raise monies to help provide some of those. But I don't know that could solve all of them, because I don't know what the costs involved of maintaining such a varied landscape would be.
Well, yeah, maintenance is always a huge challenge, and it remains to be. I mean, it's always a big subject matter for park development, and I mean, it's well noted, that there's a need to come up with a way to help sustain this. Maybe part of that revenue that we get from these potential places, the bistro and the rentals, maybe some of that can go back into. I can't speak to it, right now, that most of our maintenance is through our budget. They're allocated a certain amount for park maintenance citywide, but then when you bring something like this on, Troy has to go and make a pitch for, or we may need some extra resources to help support this. So no question, maintenance is a big concern.
So that could be a main topic of conversation for maybe a later time, and Troy can get some community members together to talk about what are the costs going to be, what can be done, what can he beg for, what can be handled by a citizen group, friends of groups, offloading some of it to, I don't want to say, there are people that need to do social service works too as part of their recovery from this and that. So, but maybe we can have meetings about that at another time, and with some sense of urgency, because I think that's a linchpin in the success of the park.
I agree.
I have something to say. Just a couple things. First of all, I would say the big hill of dirt at Sedgwick County Park is probably one of the key factors and most used of that facility, especially during the summertime. So the bigger the hill, the better. If it keeps people from sledding alongside the highways, that's better. And as far as the park bringing in revenue, I don't know that you build a park like this for revenue, but there's been quite a few struggling businesses around that area that, if you're drawing people into the park, may also use those facilities and draw revenue that way. I'm sure that as the park grows and becomes more popular, there'll be more businesses that want to build around that area. So that's where you'll get your revenue from that stream. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's well thought out, a little something for everyone, as long as everybody can get along. And the south side of the park, that's very dark at night. So I hope they have a lighting plan for that for the evening time, and that, since it'll be more used at that time as well. So
I just want to clarify also real quick, and I think these plans are great. I think this is hopefully turning out to be an awesome park. I'm very enthusiastic about these plans, but I just wanted to clarify about my comments about generating revenue. I agree. We're not building this park to make a profit. And that's not my intent in asking that question. But like Cindy mentioned, at the same time, we're going to have a significant maintenance bill for this park that needs to be paid for. So that's my concern. That's why I asked about revenue generation, because there will be some significant maintenance that needs to be paid for. And if there isn't revenue generated some way at this park, then it requires a tax increase, or it has to be paid for somehow. So that's my only concern. I agree, we're not here to make a profit on this necessarily. If we do, great, that's more power to it. But at the same time, the money has to come from somewhere too. So I did have one question also. No, go ahead, Cindy.
Same for me. I'm not expecting a park to be self-sustaining. But again, because I was on the first committee and worked with Confluence, the first time that we went through the process, and my other experience just makes me need to ask those questions. And when we went through the process the first time, Confluence let us, the first committee that worked on this, what we were told is not by Confluence, but what we were told, the committee was told is, this is just a plan. There's no guarantee we'll ever make any of it happen because we don't have the funding to make it happen. And I'm all about bringing great stuff to the south side and to the district. I just want to make sure that if we bring great stuff to the south side, that we don't just bring it here and then walk away from the south side and say, well, you've got it. We can't maintain it, but you have it. I don't want us to have to settle for that. And when I hear the first time around, we don't even have the money to make this happen, but we're going to dream big. I don't like to plan and say, we don't know whether we're going to make this happen. I like to plan and say, we're going to make this happen, but let's figure out how we can make it happen and make it be sustainable for the long term, because Southside deserves that. So
absolutely, 100%. We need to be responsible about this.
Yep.
And fiscal responsibility is part of that. I
yes,
totally
it is.
agree with you.
Yep.
I did have one question about, I'm so glad pickleball and cornhole are in the plans because that's one of the top things that I heard people talk about. But my only concern there is about theft of property. So how is that going to work? Is it going to be like on a rental system, or are people going to have to bring their own equipment? Because on one hand, if you don't provide the equipment, then people who have never done it before aren't going to get a chance to do it if the equipment isn't provided. But then if the city provides the equipment, then it's more than likely going to get stolen in a few days. I realize that. So kind of how is that going to work? Have you thought that out? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I'll try to respond to that. I've had some discussions with Troy about that. I think we've shared some of these discussions with PJ and Hank. One of the things that, so pickleball is exploding and it's very popular now. We're finishing, by this spring, we'll have 6 new pickleball courts at Riverside Tennis. Of course, that's revenue generating. That's a whole different operation. So those of you who want to play pickleball in a beautiful setting, come to Riverside pretty soon. Put in a push for that. But for this facility, as it relates to pickleball, one of the discussions we've had is what we want to do is engage popularity of the asset first. And maybe it's one of those things where it starts out as building it and allowing the people to use it and become familiar with it. Our basic concept for revenue stream with athletic courts has been focused more around our rec centers and specialty facilities like Riverside Tennis, McAdams, Edgemore. A big reason we're adding so many courts there is we had to get to a certain threshold with big state tournaments and USTA to attract those kind of tournaments. Now we're getting the numbers to do that. This is, I think at some point could be a satellite to that, even though it's pretty far removed from those locations. For additional courts if needed for special tournaments. But I think the idea at this point, and it's still kind of in the conceptual idea thought of how we would program it, is let's get some of these assets out into the park and see, how they do. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to play pickleball or have never been. So if it's close to their neighborhood, the same thing with basketball. Most people have access to basketball, but not maybe in this area. So, basketball courts, we don't typically, program that for revenue streaming unless it's inside a rec center. I think at some point there may be a transitional point where recreation staff might want to do something more revenue streaming, but at this point, I think it's more about creating the asset. Unless it's a special rental type situation, we have a pavilion there, and we can rent the pavilion and maybe that space. I think those are opportunities, but like full-time staff and that sort of thing, I don't see that. If that answers the question.
But like equipment, like if someone were to walk up and want to play, are they going to have to bring their own equipment, or?
Well, no, the pickleball. The pickleball courts would be permanent. I mean, the nets would be in place. They would be painted with the
you have to have paddles and balls. That's what I'm saying. You have to have paddles and balls, and if you don't provide those, then nobody can do it. But at the same time, if you do provide it, then they get stolen. So
actually, there's
maybe it's
where you have think of like a locker. So it's electronics. So you would swipe your card in there, and you put down a $20 deposit, and that allows you to open the door, get the paddles and the balls out. Hey, if you don't put that stuff back, you don't get your deposit back. So
okay, thank you.
I do have a question, Larry. Dave Capon spent 13 years in the military, and obviously, I'm sure we've already thought about this, but growing up back in the 90s, you wouldn't be at Herman Hill Park in the 90s after dark. What are we going to do for security? There's a lot of landmass there. Have we thought about like the blue light lamps for calls for help? What about Sedgwick County EMS, fire, policing? Obviously, it's going to be a family-friendly event, and there may or may not be alcohol sales there. What are we going to do for security to make sure that this is a safe space, that everybody in the community feels comfortable walking their dogs and bringing their children?
Yeah, so the park department relies on law enforcement to help us maintain security in all the parks. The one thing that should be noted, and we'd work with PD on this, is there's park ordinance that all parks close at midnight and then open up at 6 o'clock. We would take, as we're developing the final plans for implementation on each one of these phases, we would look at obviously trying to design those spaces to be as safe as possible using, most of you've heard of crime prevention through environmental design, looking at those designs in a way that would create spaces that are safer. Lighting is important, visibility is important. The one thing that's kind of unique about this master plan is it allows, the PD has limited resources like everyone else. Of course, fortunately for them, they've gotten an influx of new police officers into the force, so that's great. But we have a circulation road that comes through a good portion of the park, so that it allows them to engage and come into the park, go into those parking areas. There would probably be some discussion between park staff and law enforcement on things that can make the park safer. I know, down at NAFSCO, I've worked a lot down there with the beat officer, sergeant down there, and little things that we can do to improve safety. But I don't know, maybe there's, with the lighting, with solar, maybe there's some things that we can do to keep these spaces better lit with some of the newer technologies out there. But yeah, there was a time way back when the park department had their own park security, that those days are no longer here, but we do have to rely on our park department or our police department. These kind of forums are really good for that. I mean, I think the district, the people, the voice, can really emphasize that this is an important space to your neighborhood, and we really want you to get into the park and take a look at it every once in a while. Every time I see a police car pull into a parking lot in one of our parks, I thank them. I say, thank you for coming in. If you need to do some paperwork for a little bit, come and park right here. So that's probably the best response I can give you at this point. But yes, security is huge at all the parks.
And the biggest thing we can do is bring more people to the park that are there for doing the right things. And that's the initial self-policing right there.
Absolutely.
And one thing we learned over the years is as Larry said, the police can come into the parking lots and they have a view of all the major facilities. And with that, so the idea that we learned in Kansas City, Missouri project that you've probably heard of Swope Park in Kansas City, that we learned a great deal working with the police department there, because somebody who's there to do vandalism, if they don't have quick and easy access out of the park in their car, they're less apt to do anything. And so just the idea of trying to take a look at that. I mean, we've I think paid a lot of attention to taking a look at where facilities are placed and how much view there is in the view sheds to those. It's like, as Larry said, you can kind of see all those major activity hubs are very close to that park roadway. So there's a lot of activity going back and forth.
That's absolutely perfect. I mean, that's right. I mean, the more activity you get into these parks, even the pathways, anything that generates more and more traffic, that's that kind of visual surveillance that you're getting from your neighbors and friends that visit the park. Those are the things that really enhances park security is usability and just making the park as busy as it can be. Any other questions? This has been really some good
I thank you guys
conversation.
for all your hard work. And like I said, I'm very enthusiastic about this and very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We won't pull the presentation back up, but the closing slide was we're meeting with the Parks Board this coming Monday at 3 to the same presentation, and then we'll be working with Troy and Larry about getting a final presentation in front of the council in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
We appreciate everybody's input.
I would echo Richard's thought that we need to make sure our council member is in the seat before we vote on this plan. Or the council votes on the plan, I would say.
I think that's a good idea.
And are you looking for us to like endorse the plan? Like, do we need to make a motion to?
I think it would be good to have something, yes, as a general consensus of endorsement of the plan. We, looked pretty hard at this, and I know there was several things as we went through it. We've looked hard at the parking, and we pared things down, really looked at the numbers. We shaved it down, and a lot of different aspects to it. That's just one subject matter. But yeah, if we could feel like we get some sort of vote or endorsement of the plan, that would be helpful.
Great. And Elena, are you raising your hand? Did you have a question?
I wanted to just make an observation. I've been so back and forth about this because there were so many things that I didn't want to see there. But the presentation tonight is beautiful. I think everything is going to be all right. The neighborhood is going to help. And I think it's beautiful. And thank you very much for the work. I did want to ask the guys if they can make any kind of estimate of how deep these or how big these ponds are going to be.
PJ, do you want to respond to that? We've had a lot of work.
No, we've worked with Bauman Engineering out there. It's going to be literally anything we can do from a storm management standpoint is going to help. And there's also we want some water quality in the ponds, and so there's a correlation between water depth and water movement and water quality. So we want to that's really a final design thing. But what we don't want to have is a pond that is so small and so tiny we start getting cattails and algae, and it turns into a maintenance nightmare rather than an aesthetic opportunity.
I was also wondering if we talked about skating at one time, if perhaps these ponds would be deep enough, if we have a cold enough winter, if maybe we can have some skating there. Would it be too deep for that?
That's
well, just knowing how being 3 hours south of us, I do get concerned about we're going to be able to that you can program that every year.
Yeah. Oh no, you wouldn't be able to do it every year. That's for sure.
As someone who has a pond in my backyard, it's we just haven't had the winters. And I remember growing up, it was my uncle's pond. We used to get up on the ice and goof around and have a good time. But I haven't seen. It's such a short. We just don't seem to get the winters that we used to get.
That's true.
We'll probably get one next year now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
So I'd like to just make a motion that we endorse this plan, receive and file the report.
Richard, if I may, since we don't have a council member, could we abstain from that until we get a council member, please?
I would recommend making a motion on this because it's going to council regardless, and they will want to know if DAB generally endorses it or not.
Okay.
Your motion is not binding in any way. And so, yeah, I would suggest you guys just make a motion on if you endorse or approve it, so they have that for their records.
Okay,
So
thank you for the
Matt-
clarification.
Oh, sorry. So Maddie, is this not coming to the MAPC for any reason, right?
Larry,
So we've had some, this process started with working with the planning department. The process right now would be, we'd have to go to the park board next, would be our next approval. And then we would take it to city council. I think in that form, it would be a city council workshop. And then that would be primarily the final approval. We've had some dialogue with the planning department on some of this. We've noted that, you know, they've done some development with the bike path systems and along Mount Vernon and even looked with the traffic engineering and such. We feel pretty comfortable. I mean, we've been disseminating these plans to the different departments. But at this point, I don't think we would be doing that, but we could look at that.
Well, I just want to clarify because because I serve on the planning commission.
Mhm.
I don't vote on certain things at the DAB because I abstain if it's going to come before the MAPC because I can't have a double vote.
Yeah. I don't think we're scheduled to do that right now. Do you recall that, PJ? And
No, I
talk
don't,
to
not
Roy?
that way. I think Larry, the traditional process is, you know, if we move on into package one and we're building architectural elements, it probably needs to go through planning at that point. But, you know, there's this plan we have here tonight, in my understanding, would not need to go in front of planning. It's when we say pull the trigger and we start moving forward on plans, you know, the bistro comes online. Of course, we're going to have to go through the planning process.
Right, that's correct.
For all those elements.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
I understand. Good
one other thing, Maddie, can I don't know if it's relevant or needed, but the discussion about maintenance, does that get rolled into the motion or make it conditional? Is it
Point of order. We got a motion on the floor to accept the motion Richard made. I second it.
I would like to ask Richard to amend his motion if he could, if I could.
You'll have to ask Maddie.
oh boy, I'm not sure of the official process for amending and substitute motions, to be honest.
So Maddie, Jared could make a substitute motion and
Yeah.
then we would vote. And if it was seconded, we would vote on the substituted motion. And if nobody seconds it, it would die for lack of a second.
Okay, and we go back to Richards
And we would go back to the original motion. Yes.
Okay.
So Jared, you can make an alternative motion.
Okay. I guess I would make an alternative motion to endorse the report, receive and file it, endorse the report with a condition that the full city council wait to vote on this plan until a District 3 council member is in place.
I would second that, Jared.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. And that would replace Richard's original motion. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Right.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, so motion carried. All right, so thank you so much for Larry and PJ and Hank. Thank you for that great presentation. And I think we're all excited
Good, thank you.
to come to
Go
fruition.
Chiefs.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, for record, who seconded Jared's motion?
I seconded, yes, David.
Yeah, David.
All right, so I think we're ready for the Housing and Community Services presentation.
Oh.
Logan, you're muted.
Thank you. Maddie, am I able to share my screen at this point? Do I have control?
Yeah, let me go. I will make you co-host. Okay, you should have, do you have that capability now?
Yeah, it looks like I do. All right. You guys see that PDF okay?
Yep, it's good.
All right, so my name's Logan Bradshaw, and I'm a management analyst with the Department of Housing and Community Services. And tonight I'm here to talk to you about the upcoming program year funding, so 2021-2022, for our Community Development Block Grant Program, our Home Investment Partnerships Program, as well as our Emergency Solutions Grant Program. You might hear me shorten those to the acronyms you see here, so CDBG, Home, and ESG. To give you a little bit of background, the city receives an annual allocation of these three funding programs from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Any funded activity has to align to the city's goal of creating a livable and sustainable community. And this department uses these funds to create strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities, as well as affordable housing for the Wichita community. So as I said before, we have three types of funds. The first is our CDBG program. This is a program that I primarily work with. This program can be used for a wide variety of community development needs, and it is by far our most flexible funding program. And for this current program year, we're currently in program year 2020-2021, we received just about $3 million, or $2.9 million. For the Home Investment Partnerships Program, our department uses this grant funding to create affordable housing for low-income Wichita households. And for this current program year, we received right around $1.5 million in funding. And for the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, or our ESG funds, we use these funds to address homelessness in the Wichita area. And our current funding level for that program is just shy of $250,000. To give you an idea of what our planning process looks like, as a stipulation of receiving these federal funds, we have to create what we call a consolidated plan. So it's a 5-year plan. Our current plan runs from 2019 to 2023. And what a con plan does is it identifies community needs and spending priorities on a macro level for that 5-year period for these three grant programs. Within our con plan, we have what we call program years that are your individual. So you have a first-year program year, a second-year program year, and so forth. And we have to create an action plan that allocates estimated fundings each year for specific defined activities. So we have our con plan, that is our 5-year overall plan that sets spending that, there's a lot of public input that goes into developing what that con plan is. So we work with the community to determine what the needs are, and then we allocate like high-level spending priorities. But then our program year basically tells HUD, here's our plan for how we're going to spend these three grant programs in any given year. So we are planning for our 3rd program year action plan. We have to submit this plan to HUD on May 15th of this year, and it will allocate funds for the period of July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year. We also wanted to highlight a slide on our CARES Act funding allocations. So as a result of the pandemic, we received extra allocations during this current program year for 2 of our grant programs. So the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. So as a stipulation of the CARES Act funding that we received, we not only have to meet the standard requirements of these 2 grant programs, but we also have to ensure that these activities prevent, prepare, or respond to COVID-19 directly. And so you can see we received 2 separate allocations of each of these grant programs at these levels. Now we'll talk about kind of our planning timeline. So starting in the fall, all the way up really until this DAB meeting, we are in our gathering of public input phase. That's why we're here to talk to you guys about what you want to see as far as spending priorities go for the upcoming program year. In January, there was the appointment of the Grants Review Committee by the City Council. Richard Ruth is the appointee from District 3, and I believe we have a former Grants Review Committee member on the DAB. Jared, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but you were on our Grants Review Committee last year.
Yeah, I served 1 year.
Yes. And so what the Grants Review Committee is, it's a committee that reviews proposals for certain aspects of these 3 grant programs. And so in January, we also issued the request for proposals that solicited applications for certain aspects of the CDBG program, the home, and the ESG. This month, the Grants Review Committee will reconvene to review those proposals as well as make funding recommendations to the City Council. And then at that point, staff can start to develop a preliminary spending plan. In the spring, so in March and April of this year, we'll open and close a 30-day public comment period as another opportunity for ways that the public can weigh in and influence what ends up going into our plan. And then in May, the City Council will review the final spending plan and amounts, and then we will submit our third year annual action plan to HUD on May 15th, and then our upcoming program year will start July 1st. So now I'll basically break down very high level information about each funding source. So the first one that I'll talk about is CDBG. And I like this infographic for CDBG because you can see the 4 types of activity types or categories in HUD's mind that we can spend CDBG funding for. So we can use it for community economic development. We can use it for public facilities and improvements such as infrastructure or park improvements. In low-income areas. We can use it for the development of affordable housing, as well as various public services or community services in the Wichita area. So to be a CDBG eligible activity, it has to meet one of 3 national objectives. The first would be benefiting low to moderate income persons, or an activity can prevent slum or blight. And then the third is an activity can address an urgent community need. But what's important to know about national objectives is that not less than 70% of our CDBG spending, it has to benefit low to moderate income persons. And so to give you an idea of what those income limits look like, for example, for a family of 4 to be at or below the moderate income category, a family of 4 would have to make $58,100. If you were an individual household, you'd have to make at or below $40,700. So that gives you kind of an idea of what types of income limits that we are confined to with our programming. A couple of other things to know about the CDBG program is there is a limit on the public service category. So there's a limit on this arm of CDBG. We can't spend more than $1.1 million within that category in any given year. And we have to have an MOU with other city departments to administer CDBG funding, or we have to go out for RFP for contractual services with private vendors, or the way to break this down is we have to have some type of subrecipient agreement so that a nonprofit organization, for example, can administer CDBG funding on behalf of the city. Funds obviously can't be allocated for any given provider for a purpose that isn't eligible. So basically what that means is that we have to make sure we are meeting a national objective when we're allocating CDBG funds out. The next 2 slides will give you some ideas of types of activities we've funded with CDBG funds in the past. So we've done infrastructure and park improvement in low to moderate income neighborhoods. We are currently working on rolling out an economic development project. This is our facade improvement program. We hope to launch that on March 1st. That's when we hope to start taking applications, but don't hold me to that because we're still in the development phase. We have a home repair program. This is one of our most well-known CDBG programs. And basically what the home repair program is it provides 0% forgivable deferred loans for up to $5,000 to low to moderate income households that experience some type of emergency home repair. So let's say their furnace goes out in the middle of winter, or their sanitary sewer line starts to break. They can apply for home repair funding, and that would provide them a forgivable deferred loan of up to $5,000 to address that urgent situation. We provide funding to the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department for demolition and clearance of unsafe structures. We also provide funding to the City Manager's Office for the Office of Community Services. So that goes to like your Neighborhood Resource Center, for example, Colvin, as well as support staff such as Maddie. We provide funding domestic violence shelter services in the Wichita area. So we fund Wichita Family Crisis Center, Stepstone, Catholic Charities Harbor House, as well as the Raise My Head Foundation within that category. We provide funding to the YMCA, the Real Men, Real Heroes organization, as well as Kansas Big Brothers, Big Sisters, to provide youth crime prevention and enrichment services in Wichita. And we also operate and administer a training and employment program for low to moderate income youth. In the Wichita area, it's called our Way to Work program, and our WISCAP division within our department administers that program each summer. And we have about 100 youth that go through that program on an annual basis. The next grant program that I will review is the Home Investment Partnerships program. I like this graphic because with Home Investment Partnerships, we kind of oversee the administration of the funding, but we work with lots of different aspects. So we work with families to help them qualify for like homeownership activities such as down payment assistance and closing costs. We work with community housing development organizations in the Wichita area to spur the development of affordable housing. And we work with other players as well. Like I said, we do homeownership activities. So we have a down payment and closing cost assistance program called our Home 80 program. We fund housing development and redevelopment activities within low to moderate income areas in Wichita and low to moderate income neighborhoods. We actually set aside a portion of the home grant for community housing development organizations to develop affordable housing in the Wichita area. And we provide operating support for, we call them CHODOs. Not everybody can be a CHODO though. CHODOs have to meet certain requirements. They have to have legal and tax exempt status. They have to demonstrate financial management and capacity within their accountability systems. They have to have capacity and experience serving the Wichita community. They have to have community representation on their board. And one of the most important requirements of being a CHODO is that their sole purpose has to be for the development of affordable housing. And like I said, we set aside funding specifically for CHODOs to develop housing in the Wichita low-income areas. And then the last grant that I'll talk about is the Emergency Solutions Grant. So within ESG, we can provide homeless assistance. So think about that category as direct assistance to homeless shelters in the Wichita area. We can also do homeless prevention activities as well as fund organizations that will administer homeless prevention activities here in Wichita. When you're thinking about ESG though, it's important to note that not more than 60% of our emergency solutions grant can go towards providing shelter services or shelter support. And what some types of activities that can fall within shelter services can be supporting shelter operations, as well as major rehabilitation and conversion. Homeless prevention, we can provide rent and utilities assistance for families, as well as individuals who are in immediate danger of becoming homeless. And so we kind of want to open it up to you guys at this point to get some feedback on what types of programs you think are of the highest priority to you, which types are of the lowest priority to you. If our allocations are to increase or decrease, how should we allocate spending priorities? And then if there are any other urgent needs that we should consider.
Glad you asked. I don't know if I
I know you were going to have something to say.
should. My reputation precedes me for verbosity. I noticed that CDBG and ESG both have monies for shelters, but those are different aspects of shelter nurturing, right?
So what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, you said something that like shelters, domestic shelters had monies
Oh.
available in ESG, and I thought I saw some also in CDBG. So are those two different funding areas?
No. So you're right. So we do allocate funding in CDBG for domestic violence shelter services. So those shelters in the Wichita area that are focused on providing services to victims of or survivors of domestic violence, we do provide funding within CDBG for that.
Okay. So the thing that I obviously, I mean, I do a lot of cleanups in District 3, and I don't know how, if I would imagine that COVID would have impacted some of the deterioration in home stocks simply by people not being able to do any maintenance on their homes. But I see in these cleanups, you know, you get called in for tall grass and weeds or you know, trash in the yards, or things like that. And when you're there, you see that the housing stock is in pretty bad shape. Are these would be funds then that could be directed towards owned houses, like where the owner is living in the house, as opposed to a landlord situation, to where a person is older, income has been compromised, they're not able to do the work themselves, they can't afford to do the work themselves because they're on a fixed income, but the deterioration of their housing stock puts them at risk of being flagged by MABCD, which compounds their financial problem through costly abatements, which is tacked onto their property tax, which they can then fall back. They can't pay it, and they end up, you know, having their house bulldozed or taken over by somebody else. So can monies be directed towards taking care of problems like that, specifically for people who live in those homes?
In terms of, we never really like to say that we can direct money that way, because that's really up to the city council and their direction, and you guys obviously as the DAB too. But in terms of, if you're asking if a program like that could be created and possibly funded with CDBG funds, we would have to flesh through the details a little bit more, but it sounds like the situations you're talking about, if a house is to get flagged by MABCD, then that would be like a structural problem is what it's sounding like to me. So it sounds like that could be, homeowners could possibly be eligible for those emergency home repair funds that I talked about here, if it was an emergency situation.
Oh, so the allocation recommendation then would be that maybe a larger percentage of funds this year go into that home repair program. And then the home repair program would do the doling out of that however they saw.
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually heard a similar piece of feedback from District 6 on Monday. So
Yeah, well, District 1, District 6, and District 3. And I don't think it's any coincidence that those numbers are 316, our area code, all have significant needs around those housing stocks, owned homes. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
yes, when we look at the overlay of the low to moderate income census tracts in Wichita, the majority of those do fall within districts 1, 3, and 6.
Yeah, and the challenge we have is getting to those people before they get to MABCD, right? So if we can help them before they get flagged, right? That's the ideal solution for that. So
I'll also, I'll send a link in the chat for information on our website for the home repair program as well.
But Rich, so does that, I mean, I sat on this grant committee for 2 years, but I don't recall enough about the home repair program. But Logan's saying that, you know, emergency repairs, and you know, I'd have to understand more about what is defined as an emergency home repair. So, for instance, you know, Rich and I were working on dealing with this woman's garage issues that she had, and kind of, you know, rebuilding, repairing, stabilizing a garage. It's hard not to notice as we're working there that her back windows are deteriorating, and, you know, just other things that I even notice as, you know, as I'm out visiting with people in the neighborhood or whatever. And yet I don't imagine that some of those things are identified as emergency repairs. And yet, you know, these homeowners, they, you know, get so bad that they don't, you know, they don't have any way to fix the problem. And I'm not sure that emergency home repairs covers those types of things.
yeah, maybe the facade improvement program would, but somehow to because those are significant issues, right? I mean,
yes,
and-
very
and
significant.
Logan, if, you know, I could take you to some of these houses that we've worked on, and you know, we go in and we do a job, and as we're leaving, while it does bring peace, which is number one priority for me personally, is to bring peace to the homeowner. You're walking away knowing full well that the grass is going to grow up again, the paint is going to peel, those things that Cindy's talking about, the windows on this one house, all around them, they were, I don't know how they were staying in. I've seen houses with they'll have like a little back porch area that's rotted and caved in.
Yep.
There's a lady in District 1 that we're helping who has a hole in her roof that just has a blue tarp over it. These are nonprofit groups and just neighbors who are going out to do this work now.
Yep.
I don't know if there is a program that can provide funds for, I know that Suzanne Bays does have monies available for some of these, up to I think $1,000 in some cases for helping some of these. So maybe that would be the program that could receive some more money to help this. We are trying to put in place a program with neighborhood associations where neighbors get together and abate as many of these issues as they can out of their just out of the resources that they have in the neighborhood. But some of them are a little more costly, and the talent is there to resolve them.
Right.
But we don't always have the money for, you know, Cindy bought the lumber for that garage reconstruction just out of her own pocket.
Yep.
And so we were lucky in that regard. It would have been about $4,000 to tear down those garages and have them carted away to resolve the MABCD abatement notice. And we've been able to save some equity in her home by shoring it up, but that was all out of the pocket of neighbors. And I don't know how sustainable that is.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do it occasionally, but I can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
I can do some research to see. I know that that's not those kind of more, it sounds like more major rehabilitation that you guys might be.
Well, the garage was a major one, but I mean, the window stuff, I don't know. Would that be considered major, Cindy?
Well, I guess it really depends on how deteriorated the windows are, Rich, whether that would be considered major or not, and how many windows you're talking about replacing. And certainly, as you said, we can bring the manpower together, and there's nonprofit organizations and stuff that they'll come in, and there's volunteers that'll come in and do the work. The issue in some, is paying for the supplies. So
Yeah.
I'm also going to link here to, when you guys said windows, I immediately thought about the South Central Kansas Economic Development District. They have a weatherization program that can help income qualified families. They'll come in and do like an energy audit and assess, what types of assistance that they can actually provide. And I'm going to put a link to that program here as well, just for information sharing purposes.
Thank you.
But I can also, I'll take these notes and I can do some research and see if that type of rehabilitation is something that we can use CDBG funds for. I do know that right now we don't have a program like that.
Okay.
Well, and I'm going to go on to say that, affordable housing overall is an issue. It's an ongoing issue, because even if we allocate funds to deal with emergency homeless issues, in the long term, affordable housing is the issue. Because if you don't, you can house somebody temporarily, but then if there's not affordable housing available for them to be in long term, you've not really resolved any issue.
Yeah.
Kind of hearing you guys might support some types of programs that would increase the supply of affordable housing in Wichita.
Yeah. Yes. And, the Batten Apartments are sitting down there, and I have no idea what, there was some big scandal about them. They were going to be torn down or something. And then they were put on the historic preservation list as an important architecturally. And I drove by them once to look at them, and I was shocked to see, what a large complex that is. And it looks like there are people in there. So I don't know if people are actually actively renting or if they're just squatting. But it's a significant structure that has many units that's just sitting there. And I did read something about, there was an Eagle article, I think, about where it can be, even if it's standing and a lot of that stuff's there, it can be too expensive to rehabilitate the structure and hope to make any money out of it. But it seems to be, it's a shame because they look like they're in pretty good shape. It's right by a grocery store too. So no food desert. Yay.
Any other feedback?
I think, my priority is that homeowners be secure in their home. And I know from what I've seen in the last 2 years of going out to these places, is that our older populations, even though they may be perfectly safe at home, are living in some pretty bad conditions. And oftentimes there is what I call a catastrophic health event, a heart attack, a fall, that not only taxes their financial capability to repair their homes because of the costs involved with their health care. It also has a psychological impact. And I can only guess and base what I've seen talking to the people and what I've experienced with my own family getting older and and having significant health events is that you lose some of the ability to make decisions on what needs to be done and prioritize those things. You know, for instance, there's a gentleman that's been on the MABCD list for 28 months. He lives in the county. And I finally got up to see him and looked at his problem on his property. And I was able to see very clearly that there were 3 things that needed to happen in order for him to resolve his problem. And I think because he was, you know, he's got so much stress. He had stents put in, he had a heart attack. He's getting older. He may not be working as much. There's a lot of uncertainty. He's got another property in town that he lives on that's always he's got an insane person living next door that's trying to break in and throws rocks through his windows. And he just has a lot of stress. That the solution is real simple. Get this hole filled in so you can get a skid steer in here to move this house over onto a open foundation, and 75% of your problems with the county are going to go away. But he can't make those decisions. And then the other problem is the people that are hoarding. We've got hoarders, but there's really no help for hoarders, especially right now with the COVID thing. I know there's supposed to be a coalition of people involved in it, but it doesn't, they're not doing anything. It's name recognition or something, but they're not really doing enough to help people with hoarding problems. If I could get one social worker to go out with me and talk to some of these people when I go out to meet them. I was at a property today where the woman, I believe, has some paranoia problems. Was afraid to return these forms back to MABCD to get permission for Suzanne to go out and get help. And so now she's got a court date tomorrow. This problem could have been abated months ago. Actually, she's been on for 2 years. Not a big problem. She's got a couple couches on the porch. She's got some stuff on the backyard that can be hauled away. But because of these other issues, she's not able to get the help. Mental issues, physical issues, fear. A neighbor going and encountering these people and saying, look, I'm a neighbor. I'm not the agent of a nonprofit. I'm not anything other than a neighbor. I'm going to help you. We're going to get through this. But sometimes we need a social worker to go along. I was a little nervous about going out there today just because of the paranoia issues. I didn't know I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know if I was going to get shot or what. So she ended up being like a 5'4", 60-year-old woman. So, I mean, she could probably still take me in a fight, but, you know, I might be able to outrun her. But still, you know, those are it's not just allocating money for the repair sometimes. It's also the support services that, okay, we've got you in you're safe from the county. Now, how do we keep you in a home where you can experience peace as you age? That, I mean, for me, that is what I feel most urgent about, is that our seniors be able to experience peace as they transition out of this world. You know, they're so valuable. Every senior that we lose, it's like we're losing a library. There's so much wisdom, so much experience that these people have, and they're sitting in decaying structures, most of them alone. So social workers.
And then one thing came to my mind when you were talking about that I want to mention too. So we also have a low interest home improvement loan. And the reason I wasn't thinking about it before is because it doesn't really fall into one of the categories, because it's a revolving loan program that we operate in partnership with CapFed. There's information on that program also on that first link that I sent, the one that ends in home repair. But that also could be an avenue for some of these individuals who are living in these deteriorating conditions as well.
Okay.
but it's not direct home funds that are allocated out in a specific year. It is a revolving loan program. And I don't work directly with that program each day, but can get you guys some more information on that. And I can send that to Maddie as well.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
No problem.
I think that one other thing that I'd really like to ask about, Logan, ties into the amount, District 3 has 41% of the households in District 3 are rental properties. And we also have a high degree, as you drive around, of landlords that don't take care of their property. So tenants are living in substandard housing because that's all that they can afford, and they feel very stuck. And so looking at, how do we deal with not only the home ownership, because at least those that own homes, if they can find the money, they've invested into their homes, but those people who live in, for lack of a better word, who are houses that are run by slumlords, that they don't have adequate heat, or they don't, whatever, and it's not really in their purview to even spend their own money repairing this house because it's not their house. So that contributes to, we've got people living in blighted properties, and I don't know how we deal with that, but it's certainly an issue. We're second behind District 1 in the number of people that we have living in rental houses, rental properties.
So to speak to that a little bit, so kind of what I'm presenting on today is, or tonight rather, is our community investments division. But within our department, we also operate the Wichita Housing Authority, which is our Section 8, or what is called now our Housing Choice Voucher program, as well as our public housing program. And so we do get a lot of calls from individuals who are describing the same situation that you're talking about right now. We do refer a lot of people to Kansas Legal Services, because, in theory, your landlord shouldn't be able to, be a slumlord, for better words. So we do send a lot of people over to Kansas Legal Services for things like that. But I just wanted to let you know that we hear a lot of that here in our department as well.
Yep.
And what type of recourse can actually be done against landlords that are basically slumlords. And it's hard for the people who are renting too, because they can't necessarily afford to hire a lawyer to come after their landlord. So we do send a lot of people to Kansas Legal Services and refer them there.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if you're a slumlord, you don't really have any desire to improve the properties that you have, but we do have a rental rehabilitation program too for landlords who want to fix up their property. But like I said, those slumlords usually aren't the ones who are wanting to utilize that program.
And is it true that SCED will do the winterization improvements on rental homes? I thought that I saw that. Like, I think the owner has to agree, but if they're willing, then at least the house can get brought up to a better standard.
Yeah, I believe that they would be eligible as long as their landlord would agree to have the necessary repairs done. Don't quote me on that though.
I think that's true. So.
I do know that, or at least our last communication with SCED was that you'd be surprised at how many people don't know about that program and how underutilized that program actually is. They pretty much always have funds available for weatherization.
All right, Rich, let's use it.
Yeah. All right, any more feedback for Logan? Logan, thanks for sticking it out this evening and for explaining all of those programs to us. That's helpful. So I appreciate
No
it.
problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, on to the board agenda. Any reports from around the district or the library report from Maddie?
Yeah, I can share the library report with you all really quick. So as you all know that the new branch opened, it officially opened on Monday this week. It is the Dr. Ronald W. Walters Branch Library. I'm sure most people are just going to refer to it as the Walters Branch Library though. The new space is double the space of the Linwood Park branch, and it's going to provide a lot of great community services and resources, including more public computing stations, designated children and teen spaces, and a large community room built for after-hours access. Library staff has chosen to hold off on a big grand opening celebration until gathering limits allow us to safely bring people in. I've been a part of a committee that's trying to plan some of this stuff for the grand opening, and we do want to make it meaningful and take our time with it and make sure that it can actually be celebrated when we do it. Currently, library staff's monitoring the number of active COVID cases in Wichita. They're planning to reopen their facilities when the number of active cases is down to about 5%. But they're considering changing that number to up to 10% because they're trying to prioritize keeping people safe and healthy and still providing that valuable service. So right now, all libraries, including the new one, are operating with curbside services. And let's see. So yeah, that's about it for the library. I also had one other thing I wanted to let you guys know. Officer Villegas with Patrol South is going to be holding an impact meeting on Thursday, February 11th at 5:30 p.m. at Harry Street Carpet, which is at 211 West Harry. This meeting is to address a recent search warrant that took place at the end of January. I think there are at least one or two properties in the immediate area that have had a lot of crime and issues. And so they're just going to hold a community meeting for the South Central neighborhood coming up.
Maddie, I have a question about that.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up because I had been in discussions with Officer Villegas about that. I guess some of this crime is in relation to illegal gambling machines inside that business. And I guess that's what the search warrant was in regards to. We had a business person come to our DAB at some point last year and request to put an auto mechanic shop, I believe. They were asking for a zoning change request in order to put an auto shop there. And it was literally right there on that block. So I'm wondering, is that this business that, know, the same business that was in front of our DAB last year?
I do not know.
I'd be really curious in finding that out. I sure hope it's not.
Yeah, I can try to dig through records to see if I can figure that out. And then the last thing, of course, is our special DAB meeting. We will be having that in person at City Hall next week. It's on a Tuesday, so February 9th. We'll start at 6 p.m., not 6:30, so please note that time difference. I'm going to be sending out an email with a few more instructions for the DAB members. Cindy and Jared, you'll get a separate email as candidates. Outlining some more information, like where you guys can park, where to enter, and also outlining what the process of the meeting's going to be like. As I said before a ton, this is a super important meeting that we need everyone there for. We can't risk not having a quorum for this meeting. So if something comes up, I need to know ASAP. Otherwise, I will plan on seeing you all at City Hall. The public will not be permitted to attend in person. We'll be broadcasting it on the city's YouTube page for the public to view. And DAB will select 5 candidates that they're going to pass to City Council. And ultimately, the decision is in City Council's hand. They will have one-on-ones with each candidate, and then by majority vote, they will select who to be the interim council member out of the 5 that you guys as DAB choose to pass on to them. So do any of you guys have any questions for me right now while we're together in person about that?
Are you in contact with Gerald Henry about this meeting?
Yes, I talked to him this week. I think this week, or yes, it had to have been this week. And he is planning on coming. So he knows the date, he knows the time, he knows the importance. So I've been communicating with him via phone. So he should be there.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't have his phone number anymore, so just wanted to make sure there was an attempt to reach out to him, because I know he doesn't do computers and email.
Yep. I'm communicating everything with him via phone.
Hey, Maddie, I had a question. I went to the restroom, so I kind of missed that important meeting that you need us all to be there. What date and what time again, Maddie?
It is Tuesday, February 9th. So that is this upcoming Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we're going to be at City Hall.
Okay.
And that's 455 North Main. Okay. And I'll be putting this all in writing for you guys this week.
Oh.
So please check your emails. Has anybody not been getting my DAB emails? If the answer to that is yes, that would be a problem and mean I don't have the right contact info for you. But I'm gonna assume you all get my pesky emails, so.
Are we gonna have questions asked, or how's the protocol going?
Yeah, the city manager has approved a list of 7 interview questions. I will have.
We don't get to answer our own questions?
Nope. To keep the process.
Why the hell am I showing up?
We got to keep the process uniform.
Just email me the name of the person who gets it then.
Say what?
Just email me the person.
Yep, I actually.
If they're gonna get the questions.
We'll have to strictly regulate that. We're not going to be able to permit any deviance from the listed questions. We're going to keep the candidates responding just to the questions, and that actually be something that gets pretty strongly regulated. So each candidate has as fair and equal of a process as every other one.
Well,
be prepared. It's going to be a long meeting, guys. Huh?
Just put my vote down for Jane Doe, 'cause I ain't gonna get the vote in.
Just show up, Ron.
It's up to me, I won't.
Be prepared for about a 3 to 4 hour meeting, because each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to answer all the 7 questions. And then once you guys are done with the interviews, we will do a live scoring, and you guys will then hold a discussion to determine which 5 you want to pass on.
Do we actually get to vote on this 5?
Yes, DAB will need DAB will motion to pass along 5 candidates to council. So that's another thing that I will be pointing out in my written communication to you guys. And I'll also be notifying the candidates of this as well. Well, I'll just wait till I can send out written communications on it.
Okay.
Maddie, isn't it a minimum of a 4, maximum of 5?
I think it's written that way, but there'd be no reason that it wouldn't be 5 if there are more than 5 people petitioning.
There's 9.
Yep, there's 9.
I
I
got
can
notice.
check on it. There might technically maybe Dab could decide to only pass on 4, but I'm pretty good pass on 5 if
Let's
he
wait, let's wait and see how they answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Patty?
Name, address, phone number. Okay.
Are
Patty,
there any other questions you'll have for me while we're on?
yeah, but not on this subject. I have something I want to bring up.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you can do this. I don't know, but I noticed in the last segment, they talked about park improvements through some of these grants for low and moderate income neighborhoods. With the current interest in climate control and environmental issues, is there anything the city staff can look into about grant money that might support green spaces in metro cities? Maybe our park expense could be offset by grant money. I mean, it's a new thing coming out of Washington, but we might be able to find something new or something that's, not well publicized. And I don't know who to contact or whether it's something you could.
I mean, I don't know if Park and Rec has a staff person whose specific job is grant writing, but I know every department, every project, we do look for grant opportunities in general as city staff. I don't know if we have too many people whose dedicated positions are applying for grants, but it's not unheard of and not that uncommon for city staff to look out for grants that could help fund a part of a project or a whole project or initiative and apply for them. That's just kind of routine process. So I can almost guarantee you that the director, Troy Houtman, is already looking at grants, funding opportunities outside of just the general funds for helping get CLAP off its feet.
Yeah, we'll tell him to think outside the box.
He's a pretty outside the box thinker. I think he's got that covered.
All right, thank you.
So
That's it for board updates from me. So back to you, Catherine.
Richard?
Well, I put something in the chat there about Kansas Appleseed is going to be having a call with USD 259 to talk about food insecurity on this coming Thursday. They have a regular call every Thursday at 6 p.m. Anyone can join that. If you guys are interested in that, I can get you the Zoom information for that meeting. It's pretty interesting stuff. So 6 p.m. they're asking that anyone who's experienced food insecurity or hunger, sustained hunger, not like hungry, you're hungry right now, that they be on this call at 6 because they're going to talk about how to present to USD 259. They want to have an orderly kind of focused presentation and would rather have personal experience than just theory. So that would be great. The call with USD 259 will actually be at 7 p.m. And then the other thing real quick is that in SOSI, there are 33 alleys that have been targeted for cleanup. That's a lot of alleys. That's 33 blocks, city blocks of alleyways. So Teresa Cook of SOSI Neighborhood Association is looking at how that might be taken care of by citizens and use it as an outreach by the neighborhood association to their neighbors and engaging them. So I just wanted to make you aware of that effort. And that's it.
One thing I might mention, that if anybody needs a tree, I'm going to be removing about 135 of them out of the Riverside Drainage District bottom, free if you don't dig them up. Well, I don't know if there's anybody out there looking for yard trees or anything. These are nice, about 4-foot trees. I've got to get them out of the Drainage District.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
No, but I want to thank you for conducting the meeting.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Catherine.
Catherine. Great job.
Thanks. So,
Look forward to
motion
seeing you all in
adjourn?
person
Right.
on Tuesday.
Oh my goodness, in person. That'll be unique, won't it?
Maybe you don't want to see me in person.
Yeah, but hey, Cindy, that means I gotta wear pants.
That's it. Take a bath.
Michael, put the pants on.
It ain't
motion
May
to
yet,
adjourn?
Richard.
Yeah, right. That comes in March.
Oh, March, mine always starts in May.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night.
See
Good
you
night,
March
everybody.
3rd.